Red
You
Bull
understand the
and
stakes
Ford
here.
have finally addressed
There's
the
no
growing
turning back now.
skepticism surrounding their 2026 engine project, and the way they did it has landed harder than many expected. Rather than dismissing Mercedes' concerns or hiding behind vague optimism, Ford openly agreed with Toto Wolff's assessment of the scale of the challenge, and that admission alone has changed the tone of the entire engine debate heading into the new era. When Wall compared the Red Bull Powertrains Ford project to climbing Mount Everest, it was widely interpreted as a warning rather than a provocation. He was highlighting the reality of building a modern hybrid power unit from scratch while competing against manufacturers with decades of accumulated knowledge. What few anticipated was Ford publicly confirming that this comparison was fundamentally accurate. Mark Rushbrook's response was calm, precise, and unusually transparent by Formula One standards. He acknowledged that becoming an engine manufacturer at this stage of the sport's evolution is an enormous task, especially when facing rivals like Mercedes, Ferrari, and Honda. In an environment where teams rarely concede ground publicly, agreeing with Wolff rather than pushing back immediately stood out as a significant moment. That agreement is where the real shock lies. Instead of weakening Red Bull's position, it reframed it. Ford made it clear that recognizing the scale of the challenge does not equate to being unprepared for it. On the contrary, they stressed that the project has been built around that reality from the beginning, not discovered late in the process. This context matters because the 2026 power unit regulations represent one of the most radical resets in Formula One history. These are not refinements of existing hybrids, but fundamentally different machines with a strict 50/50 split between electrical energy and internal combustion. Efficiency, energy management, and software control will define competitiveness far more than peak horsepower figures. Mercedes' confidence in this new era stems from their mastery of hybrid integration since 2014. Wall's comments were rooted in experience, not arrogance. He was effectively saying that understanding how to make all these systems work together consistently is what separates success from struggle, and that knowledge cannot be replicated overnight. Ford's response directly challenged the assumption that historical experience alone will dictate the 2026 hierarchy. Rushbrook pointed out that while existing manufacturers do have years of data, the new regulations change so many variables that much of that advantage is diluted. Combustion concepts, energy recovery behavior, and deployment strategies are all being rewritten simultaneously. This is where Red Bull believe the playing field is more level than many assume. According to Ford, even if there is an initial deficit in the combustion engine compared to rivals, it is expected to be slight rather than decisive. In the cost cap era, a small gap is something that can be managed, developed, and potentially erased over the course of a season. That confidence is not based solely on the combustion side of the engine. Hybrid efficiency, thermal management, and software optimization will be equally critical. And these are areas where Ford's broader engineering background becomes highly relevant. As Formula One moves closer to road car-style energy management, experience outside traditional F1 engine programs carries genuine value. Red Bull's broader philosophy for the 2026 car is central to understanding why they believe this engine project can exceed expectations. The new regulations fundamentally change how performance is extracted with lighter and smaller chassis combined with active aerodynamics on both the front and rear axles. This creates a car that is far more sensitive to balance, energy flow, and interaction between systems. In that environment, a power unit cannot be evaluated in isolation. It must function as an integrated part of a highly dynamic platform, and this is precisely where Red Bull's design DNA has historically delivered an edge. Unlike teams that have traditionally relied on overwhelming power advantages, Red Bull have built their success on optimization across the entire package. Aerodynamics, chassis behavior, cooling architecture, and power unit integration have always been developed as a single concept rather than separate silos. 2026 regulations amplify the importance of that approach, as active aero and hybrid deployment must work in harmony to extract consistent lap time rather than short bursts of peak performance. The reported engine solution Red Bull are exploring further illustrates how aggressively they are approaching this challenge. Like Mercedes, they are believed to be investigating advanced methods of increasing effective compression through controlled thermal expansion. Under the new rules, where efficiency is prioritized over outright power, even marginal gains in combustion efficiency can translate into meaningful performance advantages. These concepts are complex, require extreme precision, and carry inherent risks. But they also demonstrate a refusal to accept conservative limitations. What makes this particularly significant is that Red Bull are pursuing these ideas not as a desperate gamble, but as part of a structured development philosophy, not attempting to reinvent every element of the engine simultaneously. Instead, they appear to be targeting specific areas where the new regulations create room for innovation while ensuring the rest of the system remains stable and predictable. That balance between ambition and control will be crucial in the early phases of the new era. This technical ambition is directly supported by Red Bull's recruitment strategy, which has been markedly different from that of other new manufacturers. While Audi have relied heavily on expertise drawn from other motorsport disciplines, Red Bull have prioritized experience from within Formula One itself. Engineers and technicians with direct knowledge of current hybrid power units, including individuals previously working at Mercedes, Ferrari, and Honda, have been aggressively recruited to build the core of Red Bull Powertrains. This approach accelerates learning in areas where theoretical knowledge alone is insufficient. Modern Formula One engines are as much about software behavior, integration, and operational detail as they are about mechanical design. Hiring people who understand how these systems behave under real conditions reduces the risk of early season surprises and shortens the feedback loop between track performance and development response. With more than 600 people now working directly on the power unit program, Red Bull Powertrains has evolved far beyond the image of a startup operation. The scale of the workforce reflects a serious long-term commitment rather than a transitional experiment. While cohesion, communication, and efficiency within such a large group will ultimately be tested on track, the resources alone place Red Bull among the major players rather than on the fringes. The origins of the project provide critical insight into Red Bull's mindset. This was never a voluntary leap driven by ambition alone. The initial decision by Honda to withdraw forced Red Bull into a position where self-sufficiency became essential for survival. That pressure removed the option of gradual entry and replaced it with an all-in commitment to engine independence. When Honda later reversed course, Red Bull were already deeply invested in facilities, personnel, and development. At that point, continuing was no longer a risk but a necessity. This has shaped a mentality focused on ownership, accountability, and long-term control rather than short-term comfort. Red Bull Powertrains exist because Red Bull had no alternative, and that reality has sharpened the project's focus. The fact that the combustion engine was already running internally before Ford officially joined further reinforces this point. Ford did not arrive to save a failing concept or restart development from scratch. Their role has been to strengthen existing foundations, accelerate progress, and add hybrid expertise, particularly in areas related to energy management and efficiency optimization under the new regulations. Max Verstappen's role within this context cannot be overstated. As the focal point of Red Bull's competitive ambitions, his confidence in the project is essential. Heading into 2026, he faces more uncertainty than at any stage of his title-winning run, and the engine will be a defining factor in whether he continues to believe fully in the team's direction. Verstappen's driving style places extreme demands on power unit behavior. He relies on immediate throttle response, predictable torque delivery, and seamless transitions between harvesting and deployment. Under the 2026 rules, where hybrid contribution is significantly increased, any inconsistency in these areas could compromise his ability to attack corners aggressively and manage races on his terms. This is why Ford's assurance that Red Bull are in a good place carries such internal importance. It is not a claim of superiority or dominance, but a statement of structural health. It signals that development is on schedule, that no fundamental obstacles have emerged, and that the project is progressing in a controlled and deliberate manner rather than reacting to unexpected setbacks. The wider competitive landscape only heightens the stakes. Audi's arrival brings significant manufacturer investment and long-term ambition. Honda's full commitment to Aston Martin introduces another well-funded and technically capable rival. Mercedes and Ferrari are defending years of hybrid expertise and institutional knowledge. In this environment, a poor start could reshape the competitive order for multiple seasons. That is ultimately why Ford's response to Mercedes resonated so strongly across the paddock. By openly agreeing with Wolff's warning while maintaining confidence in their preparation, Red Bull and Ford struck a tone that was both honest and defiant. They acknowledged the scale of the challenge without conceding defeat and positioned themselves as a team willing to confront risk rather than hide from it. Whether that confidence is justified will only be determined once the cars run in anger. But one thing is already clear: Red Bull and Ford are not minimizing the difficulty of the 2026 regulations, nor are they relying on past success or reputation to carry them through. They have placed their credibility firmly on execution, integration, and adaptability. Fully aware that in the next era of Formula One, those qualities will matter far more than history alone.